Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's July 15th, 2023, and I got a question from my posting of a tour of the second food forest. Right now I'm standing out in the first food forest area here, and you can see we've got plenty of fruit on the trees, all different trees throughout the food forest here. And the question I got was, well, how do you water everything? Are you watering the plants in the food forest? And that really is, I guess they were thinking that it might have been a dumb question, but I really think it's a very appropriate question. So in our gardens, when we do tours of the gardens, you can see we have drip irrigation systems there. And we have weed mats. So that covers the ground. That's an artificial, a synthetic material covering the ground. And in our nursery, we've got so many potted plants that we sell, and they have to be watered every couple of days. And what I guess what we have to talk about are, and I have a whole playlist on permaculture topics, from soil succession, what is soil, what are the three basic types of subsoil, whether they're talking sand, silt, or clay. I have videos on that, about keyline design, about swale systems, about mulching, about the layers of a food forest, and biomimicry. So I have all these different topics that I've covered over the years in videos on our channel. But one of the things is, no, we don't water our permaculture forests here. They really do a fantastic job taking care of themselves. Now, are there years where where we won't get as much fruit, where the fruit won't be as prolific, the size and deliciousness of some of the fruit? Yes, there are. When we had, like the last 2 years, even though we really had bountiful crops the last few years, but the last few years we had droughts this time of year, and we started off with a drought this spring going into summer, and now it's turned around, so we've got a pretty decent rainfall recently, which has really been beneficial. So, and I've talked about in the history of this property, this is all very coarse sand and gravel, really lots of stone walls and really bony ground in here. A real pain to try and dig with a shovel or a pickaxe, which I've done for many, many years. Now I have equipment to help me do all of that. But the transition going from a very coarse gravel, poison ivy, very undulating areas, it really required us to build good soil. Now we have several ponds on the property, man-made ponds, 7 man-made ponds that we have. And then we have down below, you've probably seen in the videos, the beaver ponds. We have different vernal pools. Those are transitory wet areas where the salamanders and wood frogs all reproduce every spring. And so we do have water on the property, but being a coarse gravel base, it doesn't have a plant available water holding capacity. So, but different soils, the soils that we build up on the floor of our food forests, they have a higher water holding plant available capacity. So it's a balance between the evapotranspiration of a tree and its storage of fluids in the leaves and the fruit or nuts that are being produced. We've talked before about the circulatory system, the xylem and phloem that's under the bark layer, and I have videos about that as well. So the soil holds so much water if you've got a really good high holding capacity of the soil. So how does it work in a forest? Well, in the forest, we have dead limbs that fall down. We have leaf litter that falls on the surface of the ground. So the ground is always covered in a forest unless we go in and disturb it. So that decreases the evaporation in the forest. And the trees are all networking together by the mycorrhizal fungi that are connecting all of the living entities within a forest. And so they're exchanging nutrients, including water, between all of the different plants that are there. Even under a fully canopy forest, there'll be small little trees that aren't getting the sun to do photosynthesis and convert the carbon dioxide and water into simple sugars. It's dependent on the mycorrhizal fungi on the forest floor. And the mycorrhizal fungi is dependent on the other microorganisms, as well as the water holding capacity of the soil. And as that organic, this may be a bit boring, but as that organic material falls on the forest floor, all of that starts to break down and provide nutrients, and the microorganisms and the call them macroorganisms, the earthworms and all, they bring all of those nutrients and carbon down into the subsurface. So how did we make such a rapid transition from clearing this and sort of not leveling, but flattening out areas here in the property? Well, we had the benefit of getting lots and lots of wood chips. And those wood chips, this is all this forest floor in here, this food forest area here, the soil is built up from decomposing wood chips that were deposited all in here, not just at the base and mulching around the trees and bushes, but every square inch here, I put several inches of the wood chips here. And then we let the pioneering species come in. So what are the pioneering species? Well, if you go to a vacant lot or somebody's lawn that is overgrown, you'll see some young sapling trees and vines climbing up the sides of buildings and bushes growing there. Well, those are the ones that are really hardy and can deal with very sparse nutrients in the soil. And they start to grow up and then break down and build the soil as well. So if we leave an area vacant for a while, nature takes over, and the pioneering species, the ones that are the most hardiest initially and rapid growing, in this area here we have poplars. They grow like crazy around here. We have sumac trees, staghorn sumac. We have lots of different species that are pioneering species, and they help to build the soil. So we've used like honey locust trees and various other plants and bushes throughout the property that actually grow pretty readily. Some of our current bushes, they grow pretty readily as well. Even if they break down, they're always building new soil. Not just from the material that breaks down and lands on the surface of the soil, but from all the root material that feeds the soil as well. So it's the plant available water holding capacity of the different soils. And there's lots of papers on this online. You can go to PubMed and search that topic. But like coarse sandy gravel will have less than a half an inch of water holding capacity per square foot or per cubic foot, whereas a soil like we've got here has about 2 to 2.5 inches of water holding capacity. So then you just want to pick the species of plants that can initially survive on less. They aren't going to produce the big fruit and the berries and all that you want, but they're going to build the soil. They're soil builders. They're nitrogen fixers. They're dynamic accumulators. They're plant species that, by their very nature, by their own genetics, they just happen to build beautiful soil over time. So I hope that makes sense. And certainly, like nature doesn't care for voids. It's going to put in, whether the birds deposit the materials, or it gets attached to a mammal traversing through the area. The seeds are going to get dispersed, or they're going to be wind dispersed, and plants are going to take up various little spots on the properties that are left vacant. So the soil has such a high water capacity. I know that when people see the ponds and the beaver pond and those things here, they're purposely used to, the swale systems and canal systems have multi-functions here on our property. They feed a bioremediation system, which helps to break down harmful compounds. They help to build new, as the sediment washes over the surface of the soil. We have sediment collecting systems that feed into a canal system that I can reharvest the soil. So soil is so important, especially when you're building a food forest. Now, a food forest mimics what the native forests do. We happen to live in a cold temperate climate, so we're not putting tropical plants in here. We're not putting plants that are appropriate for a desert or an arboreal forest. We're keeping climate and soil appropriate plants in these areas. But in all of these areas, we have root zone plants like tubers, bulbs, rhizomes, those plants that have really large root systems, and that's like a potato. So you have the plants that are underneath the surface of the soil, then you have the surface plants that are on the surface of the soil. And this day and age, we think of grass or lawns, but you can think about all of the other, the clover and all the other, and the vetch, all of those materials that are ground cover. Then we have the herbaceous layer. We've got the oregano, the lemon balm, all of these different ones. Then we have the different bush layers. We have the various berry plants, the blueberries, the raspberries, the currants, what else do we have? All the different berry plants. We certainly have sub-canopy plants like the smaller, like the pawpaw trees and all. And we also have vining trees like some of the trumpet vines and poison ivy around here as well. We have some of the unfortunately, some of the multiflora rose that grows up the trees as well. We have the grapevines that grow up. We have the hardy kiwi. And then we have the upper canopy trees, the maples, the oaks, the hickories, all of the upper canopy trees as well. And by having the diversity of these different plants, which produce in excess some nutrients that other plants may be needing. So it's carefully deciding on the companion species, the complementary species, where one plant may be very good at fixing nitrogen into the soil, where another plant really needs that nitrogen, but it can really make lots of simple sugars. And then you have an internet, in a sense, where you have mycorrhizal fungi that dynamically exchanges those nutrients between each other, the water, the simple sugars, the nitrogen, the other minerals that are there in the soil as well. So the minerals get harvested from the breakdown of the sand, silt, and clay, and they get put into a soluble form, and they can flow through that internet underneath the ground, the mycorrhizal fungi that feed the systems. So it's really important when we're working in the food forest to be mindful of the ground cover and the soil and the companion plants that create a guild, a social network. Then the other thing is having the habitats for the various species, whether they're reptiles, amphibians, the birds, the mammals, having all the different locations in the food forest that allow them to help control the various pests. So there isn't excessive need for extra water because they're losing their leaves and so on. So I hope this is all making sense. But I thought that was an excellent question, is are you watering your plants? And if you're not watering your plants, how come the food forest looks pretty darn good even during our times of drought? and they're so productive and all, as opposed to a garden or our plant nursery, which requires a lot more effort on our part to maintain them. So I'm hoping that this helps to answer the question. It's a hot day, and I thought, geez, this really is a good question, and I thought I'd come out and give you one of my impromptu